Hey, it's Lane from LainTCG, and I have a video today that's been a long time coming. I'm going to do an in-depth primer today on Royal Knights. This is going to take a while, so, if you're interested in anything in particular, there are timestamps below, but currently we're just going to get right into it so that it doesn't take too long. I know that it's already going to take a while, so yeah. Why play this deck? So before we get into the primer and talk about the cards, I feel like I should talk about why to play this deck in the first place. Currently, especially after the recent ban list, Royal Knights is one of the strongest decks in the game and may be setting the standard for the current status of tier 1 decks alongside red and purple Imperial, basically. Another aspect outside of the literal performance of the deck is the popularity of the playstyle and the Digimon within it. Royal Knights are some of the most popular Digimon in the entire franchise, and whether you personally like them or not, Royal Knight cards are common additions to new sets, and many new sets are keeping in mind this deck's existence and giving them on-play effects instead of just their Wind Digivolving effects. The thing that should also be stated is that this is a megazoo style control toolbox where you drop many high-cost Digimon for a reduced cost and make 1, 2, 3 game moves max on most turns. And if you enjoy control playstyles and forcing your opponent to slow down in response to your threats and potentially the things that you have in your hand, you're going to like this deck. So, we're going to talk about Yggdrasil or King Drazel 7d6 first, because he's the reason why the deck works at all. One of the reasons you may be interested in playing this deck versus other powerful decks is the alternate playstyle due to the egg, King Drasil or Yggdrasil. I will be calling it Yggdrasil going forward. But basically, so breeding your turn, all of your Digimon can't Digivolve. This does not affect your stuff on your opponent's turn, which you should keep in mind for other cards later. And breeding your turn once per turn, when you play a Royal Knight Digimon card, you may reduce the cost by 4, +1 for each source under Yggdrasil in your breeding area. So this is what makes the deck function, is this reduction. So you can take one game move each turn at a extremely lowered cost and then do 1 or 2 other things after that, generally. But also, breeding, start of your main phase, reveal the top card of your egg deck and place it and all of your Royal Knight trait Digimon as this card's bottom sources, right? So, also, should be noted, as an inheritable, it has gain 1 memory once per turn on your turn when an option card with Royal Knight trait is placed in the battle area for each Yggdrasil under the stack. So, this basically, start of your turn, you reveal from your egg deck a Yggdrasil and you put it under. You also move any Royal Knight that you have on the board that doesn't have a way to keep itself on the board under Yggdrasil, and then you basically move forward. You get very high reductions on everything from your effects. Basically, first turn, it's a 5 cost reduction, and then goes to 6, 7, potentially higher, depending on the amount of Royal Knights you're playing. But it changes the way that you have to play the game, because you're not going to be able to attack with everything every turn. You're mostly dropping control removal pieces and then moving forward with it. It leads to a megazoo playstyle where you're dropping boss monsters every single turn to try and slot them under your egg, which will then be played by the next card we're showing. So, Omnimon. This is the BT13 one. This Omnimon is what makes the final play of your game for you, but can also act as strong removal if you have another in a hand for later. So for a play cost of 14, though in this deck, if it's the first play of the game, 9, you should not be playing him the first turn of the game, regardless. But it has 2 different effects, both of which are fairly powerful. On play, you may delete one of your opponent's Digimon, which is just good. It's a non-conditional deletion. But, it's few and far between in this deck, specifically. You have a lot of conditional removal, but this is a non-conditional removal, so it is one of your best removal tools. Though more highly costed than most pieces, but more important is its second effect, which is still from the same text box, but I broke it up just for clarity's sake on this. On play, play one of each Digimon with a Royal Knight trait and different names from the Digivolution cards of your Yggdrasil in the breeding area without paying the cost. Then, trash the Digimon in the breeding area, and all of your Digimon gain Rush for the turn. This includes any tokens or any, like Omekamon or anything you've already played. This is what ends the game in this deck. You've assembled enough Royal Knights and Sources, and you get to activate their on-play effects all again. If they have any effects where they see another Digimon come into play, those will activate as well, and then swing in for game all at once. So, we're going to talk about the strategy now for a little bit. Basically, this deck is faster than it was in previous iterations, but essentially the game plan is to use your pieces, which all have various forms of removal, disruption, searching, or blocking, to set up the Omnimon play to end the game when you have enough sources to push for game. Unlike previous iterations, though, you do have some built-in aggro through Gallantmon, Gallantmon Crimson Mode, and Omnimon X, as well as powerful, mostly uninteractable stop button with Omekamon. And that will stop your opponent from being able to continue their turn basically at all. And with luck, give you enough time to end the game or slow them down enough that you can last one or two more turns after that. In the mirror match, it becomes a bit of a grind game that's wholly focused around removal interactions and who can set up their game plan slightly quicker than their opponent, and frequently is about who can keep their pieces on board the whole turn cycle or use options to set up sources, as well as trying to bluff Omnimon X off of Omekamon or holding it for the correct moment. First, I'm going to talk about consistency pieces, because I think that it's probably the most important thing to start with for this deck, but I will also be talking about the emergency button cards, and then we'll go into things to consider, so we're going to immediately get into that. So we're going to talk about Omekamon BT13 first. The primary Digimon used for game plan consistency, now that we have specific support for him with the deck, is Omekamon from BT13. So he has a play cost of 4, and on play, draw 1. He replaces himself as a card in your hand, and can be used for chump attacks to speed up the clock. More important to the game plan, though, is the second effect. So, on deletion, after you've chumped or it's been killed via effects or anything, place one Digimon card with the Royal Knight trait from your hand as the bottom source of your Yggdrasil stack in breeding, which speeds up your game-ending play. If you end up in a situation where you've played a Royal Knight and still have turn or don't have any other better plays, this is generally a safe choice to go into, and we're going to talk about the other safe choice right now. So, Coolboy is one of the best cards in the deck in its current iteration. For 4 memory, he sets up a ton of value immediately. So, your turn, when you play a Digimon card with Royal Knight trait, you may suspend him to draw 1 and gain a memory, similar to how he works in the X Antibody variant. This keeps cards in your hand enough to keep fueling your plays and acts as if you have 1 extra source for reductions every turn. Also, opponent's turn, once per turn, when any of your Digimon with the Royal Knight trait would leave the battle area, you may play 1 Omekamon from your hand without paying the cost. This can fuel draws from the BT13 Omeka, or towards the end of the game, play your emergency button Omekamon, even if it's not in sources for your Yggdrasil. And the first Royal Knight we're going to be going over outside of Omnimon is Dynasmon. Dynasmon is a massive consistency piece for the deck, and usually is seen at 2 to 4 copies in the deck because of this. And it also has a great secondary effect for your end play. So, on play, reveal top 4 cards of your deck, add 2 cards with the Royal Knight trait among them to hand, and trash the rest. While it's unfortunate you can't add Coolboy or Omekamon to hand with it, it grabs a Digimon you will be needing for sources later, and has a low play cost, being only 5 to play on the first turn. And then your turn, when you play another Digimon with a Royal Knight trait, delete all of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. It sees other Royal Knights come in off of the Omnimon effect, and will do the wipe of all their small bodies and open the way to, make you not have to deal with potential level 5 aces on top of their 4s. So, it's very good in clearing the way right at the end, especially if they have a bunch of small annoying blocker bodies. And then Magnamon, one of the original 3 Royal Knights. Magnamon is also like Omekamon BT13 in that he replaces himself in your hand and gives you some utility. He has the smallest play cost of the Royal Knights at 7, which makes him only 2 to play on turn 1, which makes him the ideal turn 1 play, especially because he probably won't be removed at that point. But all turns, when this Digimon would leave the battle area, draw 1 card. You're never going to get to resolve the Vmon effect in this deck, so you don't need to worry about it. But the primary goal is to get an easy source early, and you get to draw the card whenever he gets absorbed by Yggdrasil, or if he's removed due to an opponent's effects or dying via battle, if that happens later on. Magnamon's also a blocker, which helps prolong the control game plan in grind games if they don't have pop effects. So if they're just swinging in with small bodies, Magnamon can protect you from that and hopefully keep you in the game long enough. Also, the first option. Many of the consistency pieces in this deck draw 1 card, and this is no exception. Royal Knights in the Purge, though, has a lot of other effects that give it much more. So for a play cost of 6, it's going to cost 5 on turn 1 from the Yggdrasil Inherit, or 4 on turn 2, or 3 on turn 3, or after that, right? So main, you draw 1, then you may place 1 Digimon card from your hand as the bottom source of Yggdrasil, and place this in the battle area. It doesn't specify Royal Knight trait also. So if you need to put an Omekamon in sources, it can also slot that immediately. And delay main, play 1 Royal Knight trait card from the sources of your Digimon in the breeding area without paying the cost, but it does not get to activate on play effects. But it does gain rush for the turn, so it can immediately attack. The primary targets to play off of this are Gallantmon, that does things when attacking on the field, or Dynasmon if you're trying to trigger a small board wipe, or Omni X for its end of turn effect. We will show the Omni X shortly, so you can see that, but this option is incredible and helps you do things much quicker. The security effect just places it in the battle area, so you can play something from sources next turn. Then the Last Guardian. The Last Guardian is the best searching card in the deck with a use cost of 4. It costs 3 on turn 1, 2 on turn 2, and only 1 on turn 3 or later, so it's more or less a free play. Main, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 Cool Boy and 1 card with the Royal Knight or X Antibody trait among them to hand, bottom deck the rest, and place this in the battle area. As far as things that are in this deck that will grab everything except for 1 card, basically. And then all turns, when any of your Digimon with Omnimon in their names would leave the battle area, you may trash the card for the delay effect to keep one of them from leaving, which is, frankly, amazing. You kind of need that for stuff later. Also, security, you can play an Omekamon or a Cool Boy from hand or trash without paying the cost, and then place it in the battle area. So in case you accidentally trash a Cool Boy or an Omekamon off of a Dynasmon play, you can potentially get them back later if they swing into security. It does help sometimes. Also, Omnimon X, which I'm going to be talking about shortly, is an extremely powerful piece to keep on the board for more than 1 turn cycle, and this lets you keep him on the board to exert pressure for even longer and keep your opponent from interacting with the pieces at the end of the game. So this is a great card. I would recommend running it and the previous one at 4, if at all possible. So we're going to talk about the emergency button cards with Omekamon BT20 and then Omni X BT20. So Cool Boy's partner Digimon, Omekamon from BT20, is the deck's emergency button in combination with Omnimon X that can keep you in the game right at the end, and as such should be played at 3 or more copies. I would generally recommend 4, but that's up to you. As a blocker, it also slows down the clock a bit on your loss in other ways as well, but on play, if you have 1 or fewer security cards, this Digimon may Digivolve into Omnimon X in the hand, ignoring requirements and without paying the cost. This can seem odd because the egg makes it so you can't Digivolve, but this is only on your turn, so in combination with its inheritable trait, it can do so freely on your opponent's turn. So on deletion, you may place this card as the bottom source of Yggdrasil and breeding area, adding another source for reduction, but also enabling the inherit, which is the most important thing on this. So breeding on your opponent's turn, when your security stack is removed from by suspending this Digimon, you play one Omekamon from the sources without paying the cost. He's a free body each turn that is a blocker and can also chip in, which is great. But also, he sets up the best board wipe in the game for the late game. And important to that, I should note, he is counted as X Antibody also always as the name of him. So if you have something that searches for X Antibody card specifically, it works for that. But also for the next card, he counts as X Antibody in sources for the X Antibody effect, which is this for Omnimon X. The French flag Omnimon X is probably the most powerful Omnimon in the game to date, and can digivolve in reaction to your opponent checking security on top of Omekamon. So for 16 play cost, he runs 11 on the first turn in the deck. While he's much more expensive than most of the Royal Knights in the deck, it is worth throwing him out anyway as removal a lot of the time. And with Raid, Piercing, Blocker, his keywords themselves are pretty strong as well. But on play, or when digivolving, if Omnimon or X Antibody, which in this case would be your Omekamon, is in sources, choose one of both players' Digimon and delete all other Digimon. Then return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of the deck. You get the second effect that bottom deck something even without the source. So he is one of the best removal pieces in the game, especially if they have deletion protection, but they don't have bounce or bottom deck protection. So you will be playing him anyway just to do that. But if that wasn't the case, he also has an amazing end of turn effect for your game plan. So end of turn, once per turn, one of your Digimon may gain Rush for the turn and attack without suspending. This lets you push aggression quite quickly in the deck, and with the Last Guardian on board, can let you get up to 3 checks in 2 turns. So you can immediately attack with him on the turn that he comes out. And then if Last Guardian keeps him on board, start of your next turn, the next Royal Knight you play can gain Rush and attack at the end of your turn as well, or Omnimon X can attack twice because he can attack without suspending. So you can do 3 attacks with him in 1 turn cycle and get rid of 3 security as well as potentially 2 or 3 bodies off of the raid. It is a wonderful card, and you should be running this at 4 always. So what now that we have consistency and a reactive wipe? Well, everything else is just kind of a toolbox of on-play effects that you think work well in the meta, or for your local in particular. I'll be going over the ones that you should think about, but the standard list other than your consistency Royal Knights has Jesmon BT20, Gallantmon BT13, Alphamon Ouryuken ACE BT20, Gankoomon BT13, Jesmon GX ACE BT20, and potentially Alphamon BT20 and LordKnightmon BT20. I will also be talking about Jesmon from BT13 because I personally use it and I think it's a good option, but not everybody uses it because he's not the best. He's more for your end of game play. But we'll get into that now. So, first piece to consider is Jesmon BT20. It's a fairly solid option. Jesmon BT20 is 11 play cost, costs 6 on turn 1, and is a solid on-play effect, and your turn effect that helps at any point in the game, basically. So, on play, you may play one Atho, Renee, and Poor token. That's a white 6k DP Digimon with Reboot, Blocker, and Decoy red-black. Most of your Royal Knights have red or black in them, so that token can protect almost all of them. This by itself is great, giving you a Digimon that can protect most of your Royal Knights, and gives you an attacker and blocker on each turn cycle if it doesn't die going into security. But the second effect is triggered immediately by the token coming into play. So, your turn, once per turn, when any of your other Digimon are played, in this case the token, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 8k DP or less, and then one of your Digimon may attack. It's primarily used to get rid of Digimon that keep you from playing, like Solarmon. I will be bringing up Solarmon many times in this because Solarmon is one of the Digimon that makes it so you can't reduce play costs, and those just keep you from playing the game entirely. Sometimes it's worth playing cards for extremely high cost just to get one out of the way, but this is one of the cheaper options in the Royal Knight pieces itself that helps you do that. Then, Jesmon BT13. There's not as much to say about Jesmon BT13. This is primarily included for the end of game push versus the BT20 that has more utility throughout the game leading up to the Omnimon play, and a lot of the time is best played into sources using Omekamon or Royal Knights of the Purge. So on play you can choose up to like any number of your opponent's Digimon so that their DP totals up to 6,000. I don't know why it has 600, but 6,000, and delete them. For each of your other Digimon, add 2,000 DP to the maximum. This again is best for the end of game when everything is on the board at once. But the other thing that's important for this one is all turns for each of your other Digimon with Sistermon in its name or Royal Knight trait, all of your Digimon get plus 1k DP. This gets big fairly quickly. So most end game plays you'll have plus 3 or plus 5, which helps your pieces not die into security in the event you can't finish the game immediately. So your Jesmon in most situations will be 14k instead of 11k. Your Magnamon will be 10k instead of 7, so on. It helps quite a bit with the end game push, but isn't necessarily that good early. But again, it's 11 and it's big enough to delete, 1 or 2 floodgates, so not that bad. It's just not the most amazing. You don't get a token that can do a lot of things for you. Gallantmon. The common theme between the Royal Knights you'll actually be playing is that they all have very strong removal effects, which makes Gallantmon easier and easier to play throughout the game. When you would play this card from your hand, if you have no Digimon, reduce the play cost by 2 for every 5 total cards in both players' trashes. He already only costs 8 on turn 1, and very quickly you can play him mostly for free with Rush, so he can do a lot right out the gate. So on play, when Digivolving, when attacking, this isn't once per turn, so you can activate it multiple times. Delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, and if no Digimon was deleted by this effect, delete one of their 13k or more Digimon. On the turn he comes out, he can pop 2 Digimon and check a security, and he does a lot of heavy lifting in the deck and is a prime target for Royal Knights of the Purge because he has a when attacking effect that will trigger even though the on-play doesn't happen. He's also a body that we're going to use for the next card we talk about, but other than that, I would also like to point out that Omnimon X can give it the ability to attack suspended. So you can play this out for free most of the time, or barely anything. If you use Last Guardian to keep Omnimon X on the board and you play out a Gallantmon, at this point for more expensive because the Omnimon is there. You don't get the extra reduction, but still. You can attack with Rush immediately. So you get the on play and when attacking. And then end of turn, Omnimon X will activate its end of turn effect and let you attack suspended again, so you can trigger up to 3 deletions off of 1 card. It is very, very good. So please keep him in mind. There is a reason this card is so expensive, especially the gold version behind me, but yeah. So, Gallantmon Crimson Mode Ace. This one is fairly unique as a card in this deck, as it does not have the Royal Knight trait at all. He is just a Holy Warrior. So he sticks on the board through the start of your turn. And he is an ace that can be digivolved on top of any red level 6 in the deck when your opponent attacks, which is a good bit of the choices you have, period. So it's like Jesmon, Gallantmon, Gankoomon, most of your not utility pieces, most of the ones that you're using for removal effects, right? So on play or when digivolving, delete up to 15k DP totals worth of your opponent's Digimon. This wipe shouldn't be underestimated, especially with how many floodgates you come up against with this. And even dropping it for 8 is frequently worth it in those sorts of situations. But also, when attacking once per turn, for every 10 total cards in both players' trashes, trash the top card of your opponent's security. This card can help win the game even without Omnimon in some situations due to how much removal is built into this deck. You can end up having tons of cards in your opponent's trash. And if this stays on board for more than one turn rotation and gets to attack 2 different times, it can just end the game by itself if it's not removed quickly. Granted, the -5 overflow is a heavy cost to pay, but it is worth it sometimes to drop this on your opponent, especially just to speed up the Omnimon clock. So, Alphamon BT20, this card is primarily used to extend the clock a little bit. Not every list uses it, but it does provide some utility. This one doesn't have as many things to talk about. So basically for 12, effectively 7 from turn 1, on play, recover 1 security immediately. Honestly, that's all it really does for that. But if that was all it did, it'd still be decently okay. But it does have an effect to further slow your opponent down. So all turns once per turn, when a security stack is removed from one of your opponent's Digimon, gets -8k DP for the turn, and it has barrier, so you can proc that yourself. It is fairly simple, and it does work fairly well. It can stop more than one attack in a turn, and extend the amount of time you have before you end the game. That's all it's really used for. You're not really going to be using the inherit or anything because there isn't anything for that. But Ouryuken ACE is one of the best removal options in the whole deck and can be played insanely cheap at 4 on turn 1. You're not going to, obviously, because there isn't anything for it to do on turn 1, but it costs even less immediately thereafter. It is basically impossible to blast DNA with this in the deck because you do not run Ouryuken. Period. But you will be hard playing it in almost every circumstance anyway. So on play, one of your opponent's Digimon gets -15k DP until the end of their turn. This is probably the hardest removal to dodge for the opponent in the entire deck because it's DP minus and does make up for the potential 5 overflow. Sometimes boss monsters just need to go away, and it does have more than one effect as well that can potentially help you. So it has a light memory floodgate as well, with all turns once per turn. When a security stack is removed from, you gain 3 memory. You can just end your opponent's turn when they put out aggression, and generally will stop a play from them. It should be noted that Ace Overflow isn't triggered when a card is put into the sources of Yggdrasil, so you're not going to lose the 5 memory unless it is removed via effect or battle. Gankoomon. Basically, Gankoomon is the key to every other piece in the toolbox. While he doesn't do much himself in the deck, he gives you almost every other option in the deck mid or late game. So for 13 play cost or 8 on turn 1, that you're going to be playing him later on in the mid game or late game, he gives you blocker, but also anything else. So on play, without paying the cost, you may play 1 Digimon card with Sistermon in its name from your trash, or 1 Digimon card with Royal Knight trait from the Digivolution cards of your Digimon in the breeding area. This effect can't play Omnimon or another Gankoomon. You're not going to really want to be playing them anyway, other than maybe doing the Omnimon for removal, but you can't do that regardless. Playing a Royal Knight off this effect does activate their on-play effect, so you can immediately toolbox anything you have in the sources of your Yggdrasil, depending on what your situation asks for. Though Gallantmon is generally one of the best because it can immediately do everything on play and when attacking, pop things. It's great. This card is great. A lot of lists run it at like 3 or 4 because he's basically just any other card that you need at any given time. And that's about it for him, really, but that's good enough. Another card to consider is Jesmon GX. Jesmon GX ACE is played in many lists because it's fairly strong deletion effect, in addition to the powerful win attacking effect on the end game push. It can also blast Digivolve on any black or red. And it can't DNA blast, so you're aware, but you really wouldn't want to anyway in this deck. On play, when digivolving or when attacking once per turn by placing one Royal Knight trait from hand or trash as this card's bottom source. Delete one of your opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP as this Digimon. At 16k, that's going to be most everything. It's not non-conditional like the Omnimon or like Alphamon Ouryuken ACE, where it's like a DP minus effect that is hard to dodge. If they have any kind of deletion protection, this won't get over that, but it is basically able to target almost anything that they could have. And then when attacking once per turn, this Digimon unsuspends, and then for every 2 Royal Knight trait cards in sources, trash your opponent's top security card. This Digimon can effectively attack twice on the final push, which is one of the reasons why it's played, as well as DNAing with Jesmon and Gankoomon that have already attacked, and remove a card from the top of security when attacking as well. So if you just have Jesmon, Gankoomon, and this, and an Omnimon, you can still put out one attack off Jesmon, one attack off Gankoomon, then you DNA into Jesmon GX, you get to pop something, and then when you attack, trash their top of security, and then unsuspend, you get one more check, so that's 4, and then you get to attack again for like 5. It's great. It's just, 5 overflow is kind of heavy, but it's best for the end of gameplay than it is for the earlier gameplays, though sometimes you do just need to remove something, and it is good for that, especially being a 9 play cost like Alphamon Ouryuken ACE. So, LordKnightmon. This card is fairly simple for the deck, giving recursion for your small pieces. For 11 play cost, or 6 on your first turn, so again, this is a middle game piece, you can recur a body to the board. So, on play, you may play one level 4 or lower Digimon card from your trash without paying the cost. In this deck, that would be any Omekamon, Magnamon, or if you're using Sistermons, those as well. It's pretty nice 2-for-1 play for fairly cheap early in the game, especially after Dynasmon search just pitches something to the trash. And then opponent's turn, it has a once per turn effect that when any of your opponent's Digimon attack, you may change the attack target to one of your Royal Knight trait Digimon. This has a little bit of a defensive option, but doesn't come up so frequently because it's only 11k, and this is again something you're going to be playing, 2-3 turns into the game instead of something else, so a little bit small for that to be useful. Now we're going to get into tech picks. So I call this a tech pick because it is, but it goes in basically every deck anyway, so how much of a tech pick is it if everybody uses it? MedievalGallantmon is the best hand trap in the game. MedievalGallantmon is splashed in most everything lately with good reason, and it shows up in this list as well for the same reasons. For 11 or 7 by suspending 2 Digimon, either yours or your opponent's or some combination thereof, you get an Alliance Vortex body. I should say that Alliance, you can suspend another Digimon to gain the DP and a security check of that Digimon. And then Vortex, you can attack at the end of your turn into an opponent's Digimon. This doesn't have piercing, so it can't get the checks through, but you can use Alliance to swing over big bodies with it as well. With 11k DP and some overtuned effects. I'm going to talk about the all turns effect first because it activates the when digivolving effect, but here we go. So all turns, once per turn. When Digimon are played, you may activate one of this Digimon's when digivolving effects. It sees itself enter, as well as any other Digimon, so it immediately activates. So when digivolving, you may suspend one Digimon, or again, when a Digimon is played, you may suspend one Digimon, then you may delete one of your opponent's Digimon that's 8k DP or lower, and then for each other suspended Digimon, it does not count itself, add 3000 DP to this deletion effects maximum, which is immediately going to be 11k, most likely 14 or higher. This deck is frequently hosed by exactly Solarmon or other things that keep you from reducing play cost, and this is a fairly efficient way to get rid of those, as well as having an Alliance body to work with throughout the game. A lot of your Royal Knights cannot attack immediately, But if MedievalGallantmon came out on your last turn and you play something this turn, you can use Alliance to swing into your opponent's security for 2 checks at a fairly high DP. So it's a good card for that, but it's also good for every other reason it's good. So I would recommend running it. If you can get it, run it, period. Also, Queen Device. Depending on your deck building philosophy, you may or may not like this pick at all. I personally don't run it, but a lot of people do. Queen Device is primarily used to get rid of floodgates like Solarmon to keep you from having a whole game that feels bad. Usually, I just will take the L on games where I'm going against decks that I just can't deal with. But yeah, you have games that feel bad with this deck in certain situations, and this can help you with that. If you don't have a Queen Device in the battle area, you can play it ignoring the color requirements, and you use it for 3. So, main, until the end of your opponent's turn, one of their Digimon can't activate when Digivolving effects and gets minus 3000 DP, and then it gets placed in the battle area. Again, this is mostly used to get rid of small floodgates, but it can be used in other ways as well. Some lists I've seen have used Rook Device. Might not be Rook Device, it's Pawn. It's the red one. The one that's 2 play cost or 2 use cost, because options are used, where you draw 1 and then you can trash another device card, basically, or another option to gain a memory, and then you activate basically the main effect again when it's trashed. That's about it. It's decent. It's just kind of, it's there to get rid of floodgates. But also security, it gives 2 of your opponent's Digimon security attack -2 for the turn, and then you add the card to the hand. So you get to use it as well for your next turn if you like. And then there's Sistermon Blanc. It's fallen a bit out of fashion to use Sistermon now that Cool Boy and Omekamon have such good synergy with the deck, but this was one of the original cards used in the deck, and it's still decent for that. So it has a play cost of 3. On play, by trashing 1 card in your hand, you draw 2. And then all turns, while you have a Digimon in play with Huckmon in its name or Royal Knight trait, which is everything basically, this Digimon gains decoy red-black. So you can delete it to protect one of your red or black Digimon. This card helps you cycle through the deck a little bit faster than Omekamon can because you're drawing 2 cards, and can set up LordKnightmon plays if you're running them. That's about it. It's mostly used for protection and for some draw. So this is a sample deck list. I'm just going to rattle off everything pretty quickly for you, but so 4 Magnamon BT13, 4 Omekamon BT13, 4 Omekamon BT20, 2 Gallantmon BT13, 3 Gankoomon BT13, 1 Jesmon BT13 and 2 Jesmon BT20, 3 Dynasmon BT13, 2 MedievalGallantmon, 1 Alphamon BT20, 4 Omnimon BT13, 1 Gallantmon Crimson Mode, 1 Jesmon GX, 4 Omnimon X Antibody BT20, 2 Alphamon Ouryuken BT20, and then 4 Royal Knights of the Purge, 4 Last Guardians, and 4 Cool Boys, as long as, your 4 Yggdrasil eggs. That's basically it for the deck. You can run it in different ways. You can change numbers, different things like that. It's up to you personally. I don't run Lord Knight and I don't run Queen Device, but I've seen many lists do. That's totally just up to you. There are a lot of different ways that you can build this deck and ratios depending on what you want to do. So, in conclusion, this is a deck with a lot of splashy effects and a lot of room to experiment with deck building based on what removal effects you like. You're probably going to be running a lot of the same sorts of things, but what you do and how many of them you play, especially how many aces are you willing to play with the huge overflows that they all have, basically comes down to what you value out of your deck and what you want out of it. The primary game plan is to slow the game down by consistently doing on-play removal style effects to hamper your opponent's game plan, while chipping at your opponent's security and setting up for a big blowout at the end of the game. It does help as well that the Digimon are all fan favorites and will probably be getting support over the course of the future as well. So even if this deck does fall out of tier 1 status, it's always probably going to get some level of support especially now that we know that some of the Cyber Sleuth stuff is going to have Royal Knights in it as well. The major downside at the moment is the cost of the pieces. While these have more general use outside of the deck versus the promo Shadramon in red, purple, Imperial, it's still a lot of money to put into a deck, even if it's tier 1, and there are other good options for much cheaper if you're interested in playing something that's not a tier 1 deck. But anyway, that's about it for today. Please like and subscribe and share this with your community or friends who are getting into the competitive scene or are interested in the Royal Knights deck. The art for this episode, which is above me and was here earlier and is in the thumbnail, is by Lau or at Laulians on Twitter. My Twitter and Twitch are LainTCG. My model, original one, is by Be a Big Shot. The chibi model that I'm using now is by Feral on Twitter and Twitch. My cursor model is by VeniVidiVT or at VeniVidi_VT. My banner is by Yo-Yoms on Twitter, and my logo is by Pinkybird on Twitter and VGen. Thanks for coming out. Hope this is helpful, and good luck at your locals. See you next time.